Welcome to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Hope you're having a great day as we continue to celebrate all the wonderful people who are making Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. Hey, something really quick to share that came across in my digital history book. And it was Helen Keller was born back in 1880. And when I hear the name Helen Keller, I remember when I was I guess it must have been elementary school, and we studied about Helen Keller and her life. I remember how impacted I was by that. You know, the fact that someone could emerge from her situation. What an incredible story it is. And then, of course, in her adult life, to go and inspire so many people, her philosophical view toward life and being able to, translate what she's learned in her difficult journey. But Helen Keller, just never forget it. But one of the things that it featured when it mentioned that she was born back in 1880 was a quote from her, and I loved it, and I wanted to share it with you. And here's what she said. When one door of happiness closes, another opens. But often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one which has been opened for us. I love that. I love that. Look, I think she's right that we too often kind of focus on what didn't go right, and we're not really focused on. There's nothing we can do about that now. Let's look at where we can go from here. I often say should live in the moment. Lots of our guests, they're great leaders, and they talk about that they live in the moment. They can't change a darn thing about what was, and they can't worry too much about tomorrow. But what you can focus on is what doors will open today and how are you going to take advantage of that. But I just think it's terrific that she said, when one door of happiness closes, another one opens. But often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one which has been opened for us. I just love that. Anyway, just a lot to learn from that quote. Again, Helen Keller continues to inspire even today. Speaking of inspiration, I'm so thrilled to have my friend Todd Trenchard from the Bacot Foundation of South Mississippi. It's been a while since Todd and I have visited, so there's a lot to catch up on. But Todd, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing well, Ricky, and I appreciate you getting me on. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think we were scheduled a couple times, and we had something come up. I had a aortic valve replacement one time, and some things that just life throws at you. Like you said, hey, you never take tomorrow for granted anymore as you get older. I love that quote. My mind was going as you were talking, because none of us would be the person we are today if it wasn't for the experiences that we've been through
right.
in the past. And, I know in my particular case, I feel like I'm a lot more well-rounded and grounded as a person because of the adversity that I've been through. And it really puts life in perspective. It's a growing experience as you go.
Well, Todd, it's interesting because lots of my regular listeners know from our past conversations that you had been through, that you were terribly addicted, and you had been through treatment facilities 30 times, right? Do I remember the number right?
40.
40
yeah,
times.
40 times.
I think it's just such an amazing story. Your mother dropped you off at Homes of Grace to literally die. That's what she thought. Right. And that 40th time made the difference. It's amazing how it turned you around. I was talking to a leader the other day, incidentally. At some point, he may be on my show, but he had a really difficult time with alcoholism, and it was beginning to destroy virtually every part of his life. And he decided to do something about it, and he went to rehab. I think he stayed 100 days or some number like right. that. And he hasn't had a drink since. And he's going on, I guess he's maybe in his fourth year now, and he's doing great. Mm-hmm. And he talks about, it's almost, the way he describes it is almost like a rebirth, that he's seeing things. He's learned to find happiness in places he didn't see it before, that how it just destroyed his life. You get the chance, because as people learn about your story, you get the chance to help people who may not be as bad as he was, or certainly as bad as you were, but people who sense they have a problem and they need to do something about it. And they ask you, what should I do? And tell me your story and tell me how it's worked for you. It's beautiful to have the ability to inspire people in that way, isn't it?
Would have never envisioned this in a zillion years, and my story is a little unique in that I went to the bitter end, got sober at age 40, and now I'm about to celebrate 27 years sober. So when you've spent as much time sober as you were out there drinking and doing drugs, and, to have that full perspective of life, you've danced with Satan, you've soared with the eagles, and it really is a complete education. But what it does is I speak to a lot of people that do reach out to me very privately and confidentially, and they always say the same thing, that they had lost hope that anything could change. And then they hear a story of somebody whose life has changed, and that's what gets their attention. Maybe I could be one of those, that is able to experience a fulfilled life. And it's so rewarding. I mean, I'm a better person today because of what I went through, which I would have never said in a million years. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, when I spent time with restaurateur Robert St. John, and I mean he's also got a very inspiring story.
Right.
But he stopped, drugs and alcohol in the 80s and hasn't touched it since. And what's kind of amazing to me, I may not remember this number exactly, but it's near this number. He's got like 4,000 bottles of wine and liquor in his collection at his restaurants. One of the things we talked about was a bourbon dinner that he had recently. Right. And he does these trips to Tuscany, Italy, and to Spain, and he's spending about half his time over there, or at least a third of his time over there these days. And he's bringing people to wine tasting events and all of that, and he hasn't touched a drop. Right. It's really cool to hear people who have said this is the way it's got to be for me. Some people have that gene, Todd, and some people don't.
Right.
But if you got it, you can't. Falling off the wagon is not a good option, is it?
No. I know Robert, and I've heard his story a lot of times, and he's probably heard mine. And we both, have had a vocation where we are around alcohol occasionally, and people are amazed that, I'm able to do that. But when I say that the obsession to drink was removed from me, it was literally removed. It was like there was another path in life that God was going to put me on, and I've shared that experience, strength, and hope with people. I think that's what gets people more than anything. How could you go into the casinos and put on these big events with all this alcohol? And I've never once, thought about having a drink, or it was just removed. And so I'm blessed in that regard. But I also have a responsibility not to hang out in bars, hang out in places that I don't need to be at. If it's
Hey, Todd, how many times have you been in a situation, because you are in these social settings, where people who may have issues, when they come to these events, and then suddenly you see them partaking too much, and you've witnessed it more than once? Have you been in a situation where you've said, if you ever need someone to talk to, come see me, or, have you broached in that way, or do you just say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be that person, but instead they know that if they ever need me, that they can come to me? How do you deal with that? Because I'm sure you've crossed paths with people, have an issue.
I do. And I know some just this week that I've reached out to and just dropped them a little line, because I know the mind of the person that's suffering. They may not see it as clearly as we do, and they're in such denial. And I think the loving thing to do is to let them know that you're there, that you are praying for them if you ever want to talk. Never try to force it on them. But I know the loneliness and despair that they're going through, and they know it. And I think it's sometimes good for them to just plant that seed. It may be 5 years down the road before they approach you, but I think to say nothing is, really not something that we're called to do. I think we are called and put in these positions to maybe say something.
One of my favorite quotes was by a guy named Robert J. Danzig. I've shared this many times before, but he said that there is a powerful lubrication to change that comes from pain. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people have to feel that pain. They got to feel it. They got to be in the depths of despair in some cases before they realize, wow, I got to change. Something's got to change. Hey, when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Todd Trenchard. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank studio. Appreciate you joining us. We're catching up. It's been a while, actually, with my friend Todd Trenchard, the executive director for the Bacot Foundation of South Mississippi. We'll get into the Bacot Foundation here in just a second, but I like just touching base with Todd because he's a leader in the community. And he's all over the place, has a good feel for things. But hey, what I'll mention to you, Todd, for people who are listening on the radio, I'll just kind of describe it. But of course, if you're on YouTube or Facebook or SuperTalk TV, you see this. You look good, man. I know you've had these medical issues along the way. You mentioned the aortic valve. But you look great, and you don't miss a lick, man. You are all over the place all the time. You just keep going. But how you doing? You feeling good?
I do. I run every day, and I think, I stay spiritually fit. I try to body, mind, and spirit. I don't eat good. That's probably what will probably end up doing me in, but generally just love what I do. And when you love what you do, you get up every day with enthusiasm. I don't take a day for granted. I've lived some bad times, and so there's just no bad days. Yeah, no,
I'm with you, buddy. I appreciate that as well. Hey, listen, looking back a little bit, a little more than a week ago, the Casino Operators Association, the Gaming Association, gave had their annual event where they awarded their Hall of Fame members for this year. And two people that I was really thrilled to hear about. One was Tim Hinckley, and Tim's been on the show, had a great relationship, worked with him out in the community. And another was John Lucas, our friend from formerly the IP. And boy, what a great leader John was in the community. I so much enjoyed working with him before and after Katrina, the role IP played in the aftermath of the storm and all of that. I know he had this long association at the time, the Bacot Foundation. But you, for the second year in a row, you got to be a presenter. So you're becoming kind of the presenter guy now, aren't you?
Well, last year they were honoring the Engelstadt Foundation. And so they actually came in and they asked me to, speak on behalf of gaming, of how gaming had gotten involved with the nonprofit sector. And then this year with John, obviously John took it to another level. But to look at history and to see back then, being in Jackson County, Pascagoula, it isn't like it is today. I mean, gaming was still looked at sort of like, the stepchild over there. And John in particular made it a point to come over to the new M&M Bank and present that check to us for $50,000. And then the next year came back and presented a check for $200,000. I told him, now you got our attention. All of a sudden, Royce, Jerry, all of them were coming in. And it literally, now you're talking 15 years later, close to $4 million that they've given to us for us to put on events where we develop relationships. It's just been a model that worked. And John was the type of leader that he said it last night, he surrounded himself with smart people. And his team is still out there doing it. Lee Bond, he talked about Lee Bond, just how Lee was just nonstop energy. Stephen Morgan, who's still there, Herb G, who's still there, Duncan McKenzie, how him and Duncan came down together, from right before Katrina. Duncan went over to Isle of Capri, and John came to the Imperial Palace. But I've always admired the man. I've watched him. He had this service was so important to him. It's a lost art today. It's not the same, and I think we need to go back to that in some ways. Some ways it's good, but in other ways, John, he taught all his people, yes is the answer to everything. Yes is the answer. We're going to make it happen.
And interesting, you're talking about live your work, but he literally lived at the IP. He was there all day, every day, 7 days a week, and always accessible, and always, as you pointed out, as related to the community, IP was always going to say yes. That leadership was incredible. And then I think about after Hurricane Katrina, for people who don't know this, the IP became really sort of the clearinghouse for governmental organizations and nonprofits, and this was where everybody stayed, and we had meetings there and all. It was an incredible. It was a recovery campus. IP became.
It was, and indirectly to be able to replay history, because it was that belief in us. Actually, you had started it before by coming over with the awards, the Sun Herald Awards. You're bringing together a coast, and then to be able to look at it all these years later, it doesn't matter what anybody said. I lived it.
Yeah.
we were part of that whole process of bringing it all together. And, John was very instrumental, and, it's just one of those people that you cross paths with, you're not going to forget. And I was just honored that they asked me. He doesn't forget a person, or he just right away, hey, Todd, how you doing? Just walked up to me out of nowhere, I didn't know you still remember me. Well, of course I remember.
And again, the Isle of Capri story we've told it. I've had Tim Hinckley on the show before, but the Isle of Capri story and developing that great brand at the time, and the story behind it, and Tim's leadership of it, and where he came from. And I remember I've told this story before, but it's been a long time. I remember we were about to do a United Way kickoff, and I was sharing the marketing effort for the kickoff, and it was going to be at the Coast Coliseum, and it was going to be this big event. Big production, United Way. We're gonna have the best campaign we've ever had before. You remember it was just a big production. And I was really looking forward to this because Tim said, why don't you have the folks come by and visit with me, and we'll find a way to contribute. Well, Roland had said to me many times before, I had some exposure to some of the leaders at the casinos, but hadn't sat down in the way that I did with Tim to try to really fill them out to see, what they brought to the table. But what Roland said is, once they start bringing leadership into the table, into the coast, what you're going to immediately recognize is that their capacity is much greater than what we have here. They've got thousands of employees. They've got big budgets. They're going to be bringing in substantial leaders into this community. So I'm sitting down with Tim, and we're talking about going down a checklist. And one of the items on the checklist was helium balloons. We were going to blow up some helium balloons and release them and whatever. Maybe I've told you the story before, but he said, how many helium balloons are you doing? I said, I'm thinking no big deal. We're going to the next item. We got that covered. No. How many you got? I said, man, it's like 200 or 300. He said, oh, no. You need 5,000. And I remember I never he may have said 2,000 or he may have said 10,000, but you get the point. The difference between what I was thinking and what he was thinking were two different things. And it hit me then. This is what Roland was talking about. That they bring in big brains, bigger ideas, bigger experience, and they will transform the way it is on the coast. And that really defined Tim Hinckley, isn't it? I mean, it did in so many different ways.
I got to talk to him last night and had not, I guess our paths must have just missed each other when he was in his heyday, but I knew Rich worked with him, Rich Westfall, and they were the first casino after Katrina that we went to continue the job.
Yeah.
And so we did that for a couple of years before getting over to IP, but you know, they were the coastal leader back then, and you know,
we had the charrettes. We had, 5 weeks after Hurricane Katrina, we had 100 architects and planners from all over the world, including the Prince of Wales Foundation. And we, Andres Dwani led the group, and we did 11 consecutive, city charrettes simultaneously.
Right, up there in that hallway.
Yeah, we were wherever we could put us. It was the only meeting space available. So Isle of Capri accommodated us, and it was just an incredible experience. We were there at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, man. I mean, it was incredible. And I never will forget people like Brent Warr at the time was the mayor of Gulfport. Uh-huh. I don't think I ever looked up and looked around where I didn't see Brent there. I don't care if it's 6 in the morning or 2 or 3 a.m. in the morning. Brent was all in to learn as much as he possibly could about how to get Gulfport back. It was just such a phenomenal experience, and Isle of Capri was right at the core of that whole experience. Hey, when we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Todd Trenchard. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizen Bank Studio. I have my friend Todd Trenchard, who's with the Bacot Foundation of South Mississippi, and he's the executive director there, just a good leader in the community. You know what's interesting, Todd? I was reflecting a little bit about what you said before we went to break about all the efforts that we've done over many years to try to bring the coast together. And so many positive things have happened. I'll tell you, relate a quick story to you, and you can share your observation about this. But we did a live remote at the Coast Coliseum for the Mississippi Municipal League. So we had, I think, around 3,000 mayors and aldermen and others that are involved in city and city activities. Could be vendors or whoever. At the Coast Coliseum, so they're coming from all over the country all over the state, to be there. And so I had a show with, I had Kenny Holloway from Ocean Springs was with me, and then Fofo joined us about halfway through, and then I had a show with Fofo, and watching Kenny and Fofo have mutual respect for each other. In the old days, you just didn't see the mayors of Ocean Springs and Biloxi communicating with each other. Hearing what Fofo, how he talks about his and Billy's relationship that will even transcend Billy's mayoralship. He's not rerunning for the mayor, but they will remain friends. They share a love of music together. Hearing what Fofo said about Billy Knight, I mean, I didn't realize this, but his software company, one of the first customers he had was in Moss Point, and Billy Knight had something to do with it. And then they more recently hired the assistant fire chief from Biloxi, and Fofo drove over to Moss Point for the celebration and announcement of this new fire chief, and he even spoke there. Right. And then Mac McDonald from the Coast Coliseum, and I, just before we went on the air, he was telling me how impressed he was with Billy Knight, that he had worked with him when he was an alderman back in Ocean Springs. And he said, man, why couldn't he have been mayor when I was the alderman? He's just so practical and commonsensical about the way he does things. Right. It's a great statement about Billy Knight, who I had on my show recently, but even more so is how these mayors and leaders that are all over coastal Mississippi, how they look over these city and county lines and with so much respect. That's what we mean by one coast. And I love seeing it in action.
It's unbelievable just how much it has come together. And Katrina really is that sort of spark that got everybody to working together. You talked about the early days, but it has morphed into the coast is in a better position now than it'll ever be. We're as tight a group as Everybody
Yeah.
seems to know each other on a first name basis, and it really is astounding in a very relatively short period of time to see these people that are, Billy Knight. You introduced me to him also. Yeah, actually, anybody you tell me to call, I call them, and they turn out to be, and vice versa. I think that you couldn't be in a better position today. I mean,
Yeah.
I was just thinking while you were talking about when we look at Katrina back then. Today we've got Paige Roberts over there running our Jackson County Chamber, T. McCovey, who's running the United Way, which allows people like myself to get out of Pascagoula and go elsewhere and develop relationships, because you know that they're not stopping. They're out there doing stuff. And so you see Pascagoula growing, Moss Point growing, and then you've seen these little pockets all across the coast.
It's awesome. It really is. I had Tish Williams from the Hancock Chamber on recently, and we also thought back to the way it was and way it is today. And Tish, after all these years, still not letting any grass grow. I mean, she just running and gunning in so many positive ways. It's just incredible. Then I had a show with Paige a month or so ago, and I looked. It's been viewed thousands of times.
Right.
And we were going to visit about chamber work. We never got to the chamber conversation. Yeah. It ended up being an entire hour conversation about mental health and why it's important to us to stay focused on that. And what she's bringing back. We both shared our own stories about our focus on our own mental health, and that's just. You people, you look at what Paige has done as it relates to Moss Point and, coming back after the tornado and the incredible work they did there. And T, the work that he did, McCovey, the work he did there as well. The community building that they're doing. Just like I said about Tish Williams not letting any grass grow, they're not letting any grass grow either. You're not letting any grass grow. Wow. You're rolling. We don't have time for lazy people. We don't have tolerance for lazy people, do we?
No. And you've got I think it is our responsibility, though, to find those new young leaders and give them the tools they need to succeed, instead of just hogging all the positions like we did for so many years, sat on boards for 20 years. No. You've got some of these younger leaders that are going to do it better, and they should do it better. They've watched the people come before them, and let's ask them what they need. I've known Paige since Katrina. I've never seen the girl stop.
No, she's got one of the best hearts I've ever come in contact with. And listen, I'll tell you an interesting thing. You mentioned young leaders. That's one of the things that Tish and I talked about. They've actually started a young professional organization like CYP for the Coast Chamber. And they've started it, and already immediately is starting to get traction and bringing new people in. But as you learned well through your work with Bacot Foundation, which is now the Bacot Foundation, what you learned well is that it's you're going to raise some money and you're going to be able to fill some gaps with that money. But the more important thing that you guys are doing, this is the way that Paige would talk about it. This is the way that Adele would talk about it. This is the way that Tish would talk about it. This is the way Jamie Miller would talk about it. But the key is bringing leaders who are engaged together and letting them get to know each other better. Right. And through those synergies of their relationship and what they learn from each other, there's no way that good things aren't going to happen. It's just going to happen, isn't it?
It is. And, people always say, how much money did you raise on the auction? I want to say, who cares? The auction is just there to bring the people together because that's where the real benefit's going to come from. And each year it would get stronger and stronger because people were starting to acquaint and know each other, shop with each other, call each other on the phone. And to play a small part in that is what'll be what you're remembered for, not the auction or, that's looking at it so simplistically.
No, I'm with you. Hey, listen, I had I had a wonderful visit with the new Speaker of the House, Jason White, recently, and it was just an awesome conversation. But he comes from, he grew up in Kosciuszko, lives in West Mississippi today. Only 250 people live there. And he was a country lawyer. So he's, kind of a jack of all trades. He's been a judge. He's still a city lawyer even today. But he brings that perspective to the Speaker. Of course, he's been in the legislature for a while, and that helps as well. But one of the things he says is that it's hard to hate someone that you know. Mm-hmm. And it's important for us to get to know each other, to take the time to get to know each other. And, I've lamented with you that I tried to do as much of that as I possibly could. But, in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, and all the work that I was involved with after I left the Sun Herald and all the strategy stuff that I was involved in, I didn't get the opportunity to get to know the essence of people as much as I wanted to. And that way, this show is a gift. It is. But it's great to see someone who's in the trenches like Jason White, the Speaker of the House, and hear the energy that he puts into getting to know people on both sides of the aisle, because he realizes that it's hard to hate somebody that you know. And there's a lot to be said for that, isn't it?
There is. And, like I said, I was wondering, I'm glad that you're saying that, because you were so driven with your day-to-day work that you did for so many years that now you're able to, in retirement, really get to see this community and get to know people, and you're bringing them together through this show. And
yeah, it's a gift. It's a gift. So, one other thing I like about the show is it's authentic. So the dogs in the background, that's authenticity.
Oh, yeah.
Are you have a kennel?
No, I got a couple bulldogs over there. They probably the mailman. Same thing every day.
I know. So we'll shift gears in the short time we have left on this segment, and we'll wind it up in the final segment. But how are things going at the foundation these days?
Well, we actually very exciting things. Of course, we just announced last week $80,000 that we raised for the Home of Grace, which with the Butch Ocelot Foundation Fund, and Butch is sort of taken on what we're trying to do over here: get Gulfport mobilized, pick some organizations that they could help through relationships that he knew. He obviously has some great relationships over here. And then this coming week, we're actually going to have the 50 women. I'll be giving a $50,000 donation to Community Care Network. And,
we'll just pick it up from right there. We're at the end of this when we have a hard stop. So we'll continue our conversation with the Bacot Foundation of South Mississippi's Executive Director, Todd Trenchard, after this break. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Matthews Show from the Citizens Bank Studio. Appreciate you joining us today as we just catch up with our friend Todd Trenchard. When we went to break, we're talking about the latest at the Bacot Foundation. Hey, listen, for people who don't know the Bacot Foundation, why don't you explain to them what your unique goals are in the community?
Well, actually, worked at a community bank, M&M Bank, way back in the day, and we wanted to do something that would supplement what the bank was doing. And so I guess it was sort of a unique idea. How do we get Chevron, Ingalls, those type of companies to join forces with us? And so we actually added Jolly's name to the existing Bacot Foundation, became a public charity. It's now 20-something years later. It's still going strong, addressing the needs of youth education and arts all across South Mississippi. And you said it very, very well a bunch of years ago. I used this line last night. We became a force in South Mississippi. And I use that all the time because few people can really say that they're in a unique position where they can move this ball forward. You did it for years with your work with the newspapers. I just happen to be in the nonprofit sector, and it's just exciting to see how it continues to grow. Right before we went to break, we were talking about the Butch Ocelot Foundation Fund. These are new monies that are coming in. It has nothing to do with what we're doing. We're still raising, substantial amounts of money. And then this idea of 50 women. 50 different women coming together, coming up with $1,000 each. They raised it like it was nothing because they knew each other, and they gave it all to one nonprofit, Community Care Network. Now they're already announcing they want to do $100,000 next year. This is all new money, bringing 100 people together, and you can see it growing. So now I'm thinking, well, we need 50 men. And so, it's just, the idea wasn't there before, but why can't we do that? Of course we can do that. It doesn't take a lot of time to write a check, and it's just an exciting time. Hopefully we'll get another 20 years of no Katrina weather. I'm still watching your little weather updates every morning. It's because you're always going to have that in the back of your head. That's part of living in.
It is. It's the scary part of living here, but it is part. When you, as George Slocum used to always say, it's the price of living in paradise. We live in paradise. I think Hurricane Zeta was a good test for us, and it showed us that we are very resilient, and we'll be resilient again, and we'll get hit again, and we'll be resilient again. And every time we build back stronger, and that means that there's less to build back the next time we're hit. And it will be an interesting, already, we're seeing all this activity. It's going to be an interesting in the rest of July, August, and September, maybe even in October, because remember that Zeta hit at the end of October.
Right.
We're gonna have to wait with bated breath to see if, in fact, we take a direct hit or just get some glancing blows. But I don't like what they say about this hurricane season, but I guess we won't know for sure until it actually happens. Well,
nowadays, though, with technology, you're watching them 3 weeks out, where before it was 3 days. So now with computer models and I don't know, you must do a lot of research, because I've been going to all your sites and I'm like, how come I didn't know this site?
Yeah, I've over the years, I was kind of a tropical weather nerd before Hurricane Katrina, but then Katrina put that at a whole new level for me.
Oh yeah.
And as a publisher, I really wanted to make sure people were better informed. I mean, I had multiple editorial boards with the National Hurricane Center and FEMA, and talking about the flood maps, and because the Katrina redefined what bad surge is. I mean, is worst surge in American history, and how we warn people about surge in the future, so less people drown or killed by the surge, because that's the majority of people who are killed by storms are killed by the water. And we learned a lot, man. We learned a lot from Katrina, and I went on a bit of a mission to say, we can't rest until we've watched the Hurricane Center and others run this all the way through with new warning systems and all those kinds of things. And, models became more available to people who would dig to find them. Now, man, they're a dime a dozen now. Everybody's posting the models now.
Right.
But I've learned what to worry about and what not to worry about. That's the one thing that has really helped me. But Todd, it's been great to catch up with you, my friend.
Always is, Ricky. And, you'll always play a special role in my not only personal life, but my career life. A lot of people, you can look back, gave you a shot. Royce Cumbus won, obviously, yourself, Robbie Maxwell. And to see those people that, stepped up and took somebody that only a few years earlier was in a pretty bad state and give them a platform, it makes me want to do the same thing.
Yeah. It's a great story. It's a great story of human resiliency, and a reminder that don't ever give up on somebody. Never give up on anybody. Mm-hmm. God bless you, my friend. Have a great day.
Thank you. Good to see you, Kyle.
Hey, thank you very much. This has been Todd Trenchard for the Bacot Foundation of South Mississippi. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.